Hello everybody, it's Foxy speaking and welcome to another episode of Foxy's Fun Inspirational Chats. And today I will be your host. And in this episode, this is another Robert the Cat story. It was Valentine's Day, and Robert the Cat knew that every Valentine's Day his owners, who were happily married, would always provide each other and exchange each other both Valentine's gifts and also represent a lot of love for each other and much kindness towards each other. Robert the Cat, there was a cat he fancied, and he wanted to represent his feelings and kindness towards her. But he was trying to think of which one of his female friends it would be. As Robert had his breakfast after his owners gave him his breakfast, Robert the Cat, once he'd finished, he thought, who is it that I want to go out with or meet up with and show my feelings towards? Suddenly an idea popped into Robert's head. I'd like to show my feelings and represent my feelings to Florence. I have a fond spot for lovely Florence, Robert said, and so Robert, since he had just finished his breakfast, the black cat walked out of the cat flap of his house and walked around the neighbourhoods to find Florence. As he went exploring the neighbourhood, walking from garden to garden, house to house, he suddenly found Florence sitting on a wall, licking her paw. Robert decided to walk slowly so that he wouldn't startle Florence. He walked slowly and slowly. He was about 4 meters away until Robert... he was about 4 meters away until Florence turned a corner and saw Robert walking in the distance. Then she said, "Hello, Robert," Florence said in her sweet voice. Robert saw the little skinny cat, the little skinny black and white cat, and that was Florence. "Hello, Florence," Robert said towards her. "Oh, Florence. Oh, it's so wonderful to see you," Robert said, and he pressed his head against Florence's head, and then he began to lick her on the cheek. Oh, Robert," Florence giggled. "Gosh, you're in quite an interesting mood today. What's with it with you today?" "It's Valentine's Day, Florence. I'm showing my feelings towards you. You are really just the most beautiful cat I have ever seen." Florence found it so terribly touching. She steadily walked over towards Robert and began to lick him 4 times on his little nose. And then she put her head against his head and began nuzzling his face a good few times. And once she'd finished nuzzling Robert, she said, "Well, Robert, you are the most handsome cat I've ever met, and I love you. I love you dearly. You're always a wonderful friend, and I want to be your Valentine for the day. You've truly made my day, and you've certainly made my Valentine's Day for today." Robert couldn't have been so happy. He was very accepting and said, "Whatever you want to do, Florence," Robert said, "I'd be happy to follow your lead." And so the 2 cats, Robert and Florence, leapt down from the wall and began to walk together, side by side, like girlfriend and boyfriend. Robert and Florence decided to just stay within the neighbourhood, going for a little walk together, which they thought was more than enough to show a nice sense of romance and a good romantic connection towards one another. as Robert and Florence were walking along the neighbourhood, many people looked towards Robert and Florence and decided to take some pictures. They clearly thought that what Robert and Florence were doing represented the epitomised distinction of kitty romance. In a way it did, as truth had things. Robert and Florence didn't realise that what they were doing represented something potentially very, very special. They continued walking along the neighbourhoods and walked in other fields and forests within their locality. And underneath a tree, before they were to go back home together, they decided to sit underneath a tree together and give each other a kiss. It was going to be Robert and Florence's first kiss. As they sat under the tree, they sat fairly close together, only about half a metre apart. They walked slightly closer towards one another, and then Robert slowly bent his nose and head forward, and Florence did the same, and they both began licking each other together on the nose. The licking on their nose lasted for a good minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then before long, after one more final lick on their noses together, it was time for them to go back home. Robert and Florence walked the neighbourhood together, staying side by side, as Florence and Robert would not leave sides, as it was Valentine's Day, and they wanted to represent as much love and as much of a romantic connection as possible, and as much kindness towards each other, as it was the special Valentine's Day. The cold evening began to swirl in, and they knew it was going to be time to go home, because they would have wanted their tea, but they were happy they had a good Valentine's Day out together. Florence reached her home residence, and as Florence said, "Goodbye, Robert, love you lots, you're a wonderful friend, and thank you for being my Valentine today." "Oh, any time, Florence, you're quite welcome," Robert said. "You can be my Valentine any day. Next time Valentine's Day comes along, you can certainly be my Valentine." Before Florence walked back home to her home residency, she walked over and licked Robert on the nose, giving him a kiss. And then she said another sweet "goodbye," and the skinny little petite black and white cat walked into her home residency, and Robert walked towards his home residence and got home safely. Before long it was time for him to have his tea. Robert had his tea, but his owners were to be going out together, as they were going to go out on a Valentine's date together. There they were, all smartly dressed, with the husband dressed in a nice suit and tie, and the wife dressed in a nice skirt, a nice top and cardigan, and nicely made up with a nice ribbon in her hair. And they both said, "Goodbye, do be good, won't you, Robert?" they said, as they spoiled him rotten. Before they left, they spoiled him rotten, turning on the television of cartoons and things, and then they left the house. Robert sat in the sofa watching all sorts of cartoons, ranging from Tom and Jerry to Looney Tunes and various other interesting cartoons and things. Then, before long, Robert had decided he'd had enough television time and turned off the television, putting his paw on the off button of the television remote. Then, before long, Robert played with his model railway set. Then, before long, Robert decided to go to bed. before his owners. He curled up like a ball on his owner's bed and fell fast asleep, dreaming of what a wonderful Valentine's Day he had experienced, and he knew that any time or potentially every year Valentine's Day comes along, he and Florence will have some Valentine's Day adventures together. The end. Thanks everybody indeed for watching this very video, and please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. And as we've got to Valentine's Day, or certainly for the special Valentine's Day message, do be kind and represent much love to your spousal companions and the person you love and care deeply for in your relationship of partnerships. Ta-ta, another time. There'll certainly be more Robert the Cat episodes where that came from, and there'll be more in the future.